Okay, let's take a look at it.
This was a trinket which had the effect to remove 1 bleed effect.
This is really good.
Seeing as trinkets were kind of rare and hard to get,
It's only a 3-minute CD.
You didn't really lose much for having this equipped. And using it to get rid of a bleed from a warrior or rogue in PvP, or the odd raid or dungeon boss who applied a bleed, was pretty good. So it was a unique trinket with an effect that was pretty useful, despite the fact it gave no other stats. Then again, a lot of trinkets in vanilla didn't really have stats on them either, and would sometimes only provide a unique effect. The trinket was easy to get too. All you had to do was complete one quest in the Syrian Gorge, which required you to go around and kill 20 dinosaurs. And there originally was no limit on the bleed it would remove. So when the Burning Crusade came out, and one of the bosses in the new raid, Morose and Karazhan, used a hard-hitting bleed as one of its mechanics, tanks were using this vanilla WoW trinket in order to remove it. So they added a restriction to the trinket, where it would only remove a bleed effect applied from a target level 60 or below.
Wait, really?
Because outside of this trinket, there are no ways to remove bleeds outside of a dwarf's racial ability stone form, and straight up immunity spells, which remove everything. Bleeds are one of the few common dot types which can't be removed by healers.
My guild was trash at the beginning of Burning Crusade, so I don't remember that happening. Like back then, like my guild was so fucking bad. We didn't even worry about Moros. We're like, man, maybe one day we'll be able to get fucking Moros down. But we never even got a chance for that, man.
Although in Legion, they did add a homage item in the game called the Feathered Loofah. It was an item that you could create with First Aid that had the effect to heal for a little bit and remove bleed effects, but only while you're on the Broken Isles.
So
and with the removal of First Aid in BFA, this item was just added to Tailors along with all other First Aid crafts. And at number 9, we have the 6 Demon Bag.
This
was an item with an on-use effect, which would have 1 of 6 random effects. 3 of its effects were to shoot out a spell. 2 of its effects were CCs. Its last effect was to summon a Fell Hunter pet for you for a little bit.
Wait, what?
Of its 6 effects, its 3 spell effects were a lot more common than the other 3.
That's fucking awesome.
So every time you used it, it had a higher than normal chance to shoot a fireball,
holy shit,
frostbolt, which would slow the target for 5 seconds as well, or a chain lightning,
damn,
which would chain
dude.
you 2 other targets. And then its other 3 more rarer effects was a cyclone-like ability, which was just a straight up stun, a polymorph, and then the Fell Hunter pet summon. Since trinkets were pretty rare, and you had a good chance for its effects to just do damage, and it only had a 3-minute cooldown, this item, despite having a weird effect, wasn't half bad as far as DPS trinkets go. Obviously, there were much better ones in the game, but if you had this one, it at least had some fun effects on it if it didn't do damage.
Dude, I didn't even know anything
8,
about that.
The Gnomish Mind Control Cap.
Oh, this was the Vertnoon fucking hat.
To possibly mind control an enemy
remember this shit.
Which would then allow you to control them like a Warlock or Hunter pet. But if you already had a pet out, you would have to dismiss your pet first in order to use this ability. But there was also a few catches to it. After patch 1.11, you could only use this item on targets out of combat. Also, you had to be an engineer with a high engineering skill in order to use the item.
That's whenever they took out all the fun.
Despite its name, though, you did not need to be a Gnomish engineer. Any engineer could use this helmet. The helm had a 30-minute cooldown, so not something that could be used very often. And as probably the biggest caveat to this thing, it had a chance to fail, which was pretty common with a lot of engineering.
I wonder what would happen if it fails.
That's still kind of the case today.
Do you become like
if this thing failed, it had a chance to just not do anything, or mind control yourself and put you under the control of the mob you were attempting to mind control. And because engineering items had a
that's so badass, dude. That is so badass. And, I mean, really, it is so fucking cool that they had that back in the game then. I used to love that kind of shit. I don't know what happened. I already saw it. We never watched this. Trust me, if we had watched it, there'd be 8 different React videos about it. That's how I check if I've seen it before. I have not seen this video before. I don't know why people keep saying that. Yeah, that's fucking awesome, man. It's not back in the day. We have it today. That is true. That is very true.
Pretty high chance to fail in Vanilla WoW. This was not used as a reliable form of CC, and instead, just kind of a fun item with occasional niche uses. Number 7, the Horned Viking Helmet. This helmet had the on-use effect to charge an enemy and incapacitate them for 30 seconds, but it would also knock you down and stun you for a bit. A 30-second CC is actually an incredibly useful effect, to the point where a lot of warriors would farm the helmet in order to use it in PvP. And of course, had some niche PvE uses as well.
I remember, I think it was in like Kip's dueling tournament where you let warriors use this helmet for like an extra charge. I was like, yeah, right, dude. Like, I wish that warriors had, I think in vanilla, if they had one extra charge, or like if they had heroic leap in vanilla, I think that they would be better, right? And that, if I could give warriors one ability in vanilla WoW, it would be heroic leap. I think that's what would be the most fair thing. I don't know, react to any. Hi, Izzy. Hi. Yeah, I mean, they're good. No, just give them one heroic leap, and then that way they're not going to just get so completely broken. No. Just one extra leap. That's all. There's just one extra leap.
CC were heavily used in dungeons and raids. The helmet itself dropped from Eric the Swift in Oldemon, and is only available to Horde players, as the NPC is friendly to Alliance.
Yep.
And since it was located inside Oldemon, a not max level dungeon, warriors could solo this place to grab it if they were smart about it, as the item dropped from one of 3 of the Lost Vikings. So if you attacked one of them, the other 2 were going to join in.
Yep.
Soloing lower level dungeons back in vanilla WoW was a lot harder than it is today.
Yeah, it's a joke.
Even if you had about 20 levels on the place. And since the helmet had such a good effect, after vanilla WoW, they gave the helmet a little restriction that it could only be used on targets level 60 and lower, basically. Number 6, Skull of Impending Doom.
Everybody knows about this one.
That has the effect to increase your run speed by 60% for 10 seconds, which was a pretty good effect back when not all classes had speed increasers. And the few that did had incredibly long cooldowns or restrictions placed on them.
This is the Swifty weapon right here.
Only had a 3-minute cooldown, but when used, it would deal damage to you and then drain mana over its duration. So the offhand worked very similar to modern day Burning Rush, a talent that warlocks have which increase their run speed but deals damage to them while it's active. If anything, Burning Rush was probably inspired by the Skull of Impending Doom. In order to get this offhand, you had to complete a 4-part quest chain,
that's actually very true.
Had you go to a dungeon and around the world killing things. The quest would start in the Badlands from a dwarf, who would send you to Oldemon to grab a tablet, which, despite the quest text, didn't actually require you to go inside Oldemon, as the tablet was located right outside the entrance.
Shit.
Then you would go to another quest giver in either Ironforge or Undercity, depending on your faction, who would then send you to Dustwallow Marsh, Stranglethorn, and the Alteric Mountains to collect 3 items from 3 elite mobs. Then you'd be sent back to the dwarf in the Badlands and you'd receive your skull. Even with the drawbacks of the skull, it was still a pretty useful item just for the speed increase it gave
My
you.
mom still has
and
this
even
from
saw
vanilla
some
WoW
niche
on her old
uses in
character.
PvP, on classes that can equip an offhand normally. For the Burning Crusade, the item received an update to drain 60% of your mana and health when you used it, instead of a fixed amount like it did in vanilla WoW. This was most likely done so it couldn't be abused by the new health values that players had, keeping its drawback as an actual drawback to it. And then in the Cataclysm, you can no longer obtain this item. So if you have one, it still works like the TBC version to this day. And at number 5, we have the Freezing Band.
The Hobbs way
of
pulling, dude. This was a world drop
epic ring that had a 1% chance whenever you were hit to freeze the target for 5 seconds. And inflict a little bit of frost damage. It also gave some frost resist and increased the damage of your frost spells. Now, the unique thing about this item is absolutely that on-hit chance of freezing a target for 5 seconds, as this freeze was treated basically like a stun, and would just freeze them in a block of ice for 5 seconds when activated.
Do you guys want to watch that after this, dude? Assuming this shit's still fucked, man. We should go watch the Hobbs video, man. Like, that was such a good fucking video.
Had no internal cooldown, and did stack with another freezing band. As this ring was not unique equip, you could have 2 of them on at the same time to double the chances of getting freeze procs.
2%.
The only thing that might have prevented this from happening, though, was how you obtain this ring.
They were expensive.
It was a world drop epic item, which is about the hardest way to obtain an item in the game. As you just have to get really lucky to obtain this from a random drop. So usually, the best way to obtain one was to just buy it off the auction house for a crap ton of gold.
I am accepting gold, by the way, guys.
There was no guarantees that there would be one on the auction house. But if you were very rich and you played on a server with these being sold,
Yep.
you could obtain 2 of them and have fun with your enemies randomly being stunned whenever they hit you. And since the targets were treated as frozen, there was lots of synergy with Frost Mages and their Shatter talent. And at number 4, we have the Thunder Brew Boot Flask. This was another trinket item, which had 2 unusual effects tied to it.
250 damage, that's not a big deal.
The first being, when you used it, you would breathe fire for 5 seconds.
Like Onyxia.
Which would give you a nice little AoE. And I've heard reports that this AoE could be used without a target, and wouldn't aggro nearby guards if used on low-level players in towns. Its second effect is that it would get you drunk,
good, dude.
which could be a good or bad thing, depending on who you ask, and all on a
It's a bad
measly
thing.
30-minute cooldown.
It's a bad thing.
Vanilla WoW
Drinking
had
is bad.
incredibly long cooldowns on a lot of their items for almost no reason.
Yeah, there's like one random item. It's like a 45-minute cooldown to increase your strength by 6 for 5 minutes. A 45 minutes. It's like, who the fuck thought of that? Like, that was the dumbest thing, man.
That was kind of the name of the game back then. Everything had long cooldowns in other games, and if anything, WoW's cooldowns were pretty reasonable in comparison. You rarely see abilities or items with cooldowns this long today,
Yep.
when that was kind of the norm back then, as you may have noticed with some of the other items on the list. Now, the way to acquire this item required a lot of legwork. You had to complete a 5-part cross-continental journey in order to complete the quest chain, which awarded this trinket.
I'm not gonna get this
So
item.
let's go over it. First part of the quest chain required you to talk to a dwarf in Westfall.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
that
get this
required you to be
stupid ass
level
item.
40
There's
in
no way
order
I'm
to
gonna waste
accept
my
the
time with
quest.
this bullshit.
Westfall was a low-level zone, so
It's a
almost
bullshit ass
impossible
item.
you found this on your own while leveling normally, and also unlikely you found this quest when you're at max level, since the quest didn't appear for low-level players or max-level players. And the quest giver himself is kind of hidden in an out-of-the-way location. This is kind of a secretive quest to accept. Anyways, the first part of the quest required you to go to Stranglethorn Vale, in the middle of a Naga camp in order to get some holy...
Guys, it seems like we're able to load back in for at least probably 35 seconds before we disconnect again. So if you're part of the group, please load back in. Smitty, you've got 1 spot, and then we're still waiting on our last slot. Okay, make your way over to BRD. Or sorry, UBRS.
spring water. The second part of the quest chain required you to get 3 separate materials. One located in the Swamp of Sorrows, another located in Tanaris, and the last all the way in the hinterlands. Then you'd be asked to get 1 true silver bar, which you could just buy off the auction house. And after that, you'd be sent on another journey, this time to Feralis in order to get a branch. And then for the final part of the quest, you'd be sent to the Syrian Gorge in order to get a piece of oak.
Oh!
Then, after you return to Westfall, you'd finally get your trinket.
Wow.
There's some speculation that this was meant to be a quest for players newly obtaining their mounts, to give them a reason to run around the world with their newfound mounts.
That's actually
and that's
really
why it had
smart.
them go to like
Damn.
5 different parts of the world.
That's
a
really
speculation
smart.
that
What
was
the
most
fuck?
likely entirely correct, as in the WoW Diary book, a book in which one of the WoW vanilla developers talks about
That's a John
what
Stats
went
video.
into making the game.
Yep.
They do talk about how they really wanted cross-continental quest for all classes at level 40, so they'd have a reason to use their new mounts. This quest is a good example of what they had planned.
See, that's so smart. Like that's so smart, because like if you make a cross-continental quest at level 40, if you just spend all your time in dungeons, you don't really find a reason to, like, do you need a mount if you live in Scarlet Monastery? No. So giving people reasons to go out there and actually see, like, oh wow, I need my mount so I can do this faster. That's what it was all about, man. And it's actually really crazy to think like all the different ways that they figured this shit out. Like I'm so fucking glad about that. Like, I mean, like, Classic WoW, it's just literally those guys were fucking geniuses. Like, I mean, they were fucking geniuses. Okay, let's go.
And for every class, instead of just a few of them getting quests like this. Number 3, the Spectral Essence. This trinket has the effect to allow you to interact with ghosts inside of one town. This trinket was pretty standard for quest-like items and special effects, As trinkets in vanilla WoW were not very commonplace, and good trinkets were pretty rare, your trinket spot was usually fine to equip something there without hindering your character all that much.
Okay.
In order to get the trinket, you had to complete a quest, which would send you into Skullomance to kill a rare elite.
Oh yeah, we
and
were gonna
burn
do
2
this.
bodies. Then you'd get this trinket, which would allow you to talk to the folks of Siradaro, and even buy some unique items from a vendor, which could only be seen with this trinket, or the Eye of Divinity, a trinket only priests could equip that dropped from a boss in Molten Core. The trinket didn't have any stats or do anything else. This is basically just the precursor to quest items, which did special things. Blizzard would usually just put them on trinkets that you had to equip. And at number 2, we have the Dark Moon card Twisty Nether. This was a Dark Moon trinket which had the effect, which would only have a chance to activate when you died. Basically, it gave you a 10% chance to resurrect after dying, with 20% health and mana. And when the trinket rezzed you, it worked kind of like having a soul stone on you, in which you could choose to accept a resurrection or not. Now, seeing as this trinket only had a 10% chance, it was not at all reliable, and not really worth the trinket slot in raids or dungeons. Its uses were basically just for solo content to occasionally
That's for my
save
BIS.
you a run back to your corpse. Or if you literally didn't
That's
have
my
any other
BIS,
trinket,
dude.
it at least had the potential to be sometimes useful in raids or dungeons.
Holy
Now,
shit.
this trinket didn't actually see very much use until arenas were added to the game in the Burning Crusade, in which people would equip this trinket in order to sometimes come back to life in an arena match, which could single-handedly help you win the game. Usually, after one person dies in arena, the team which secured the kill will basically treat it as if they've already won, and maybe let their guard down a little bit. So, seeing someone res back up real quick to join the fight is all it could really take in order to turn the tide of the battle back in your favor.
Yeah, I guess so.
And as far as I know, this trinket still works in arenas today. Maybe. I tried looking it up and couldn't really find any confirmation, but I also didn't find anything saying that it didn't. And it
Imagine somebody using that in like BlizzCon or something. God, dude, that'd be so funny. And like, especially like that, the player, the casters wouldn't understand it. They think it was a bug. Oh my God, that'd be fucking hilarious.
Number 1, we have the Hook of the Master Angler. This is a trinket that had the on-use effect to turn you into a fish and allow underwater breathing and an increased swim speed. Kind of like the artifact fishing pole effect, which turns you into a fish and allows you to swim faster. Except instead of having to equip something in your weapon slot, this one only required you to equip it in your trinket slot. Yeah. Unusual for a trinket like this trinket actually didn't have a cooldown in vanilla WoW.
How I get this?
Usually all fun abilities had incredibly long cooldowns.
How I become a fish?
This one, you could just turn to a fish whenever you wanted. Well, outside of waiting 30 seconds after equipping the trinket anyway. The trinket is a reward from the Stranglethorn Fishing Extravaganza event and winning the grand prize.
Fuck that.
So not many people could get it, considering the event is only held once a week. And basically, only one person per server can win per week.
Literally
you can still
never
win
gonna
this
do
trinket
that trash.
today, but you do have to get first place in the fishing tournament.
No way.
Which is pretty difficult. Unless you're on a server that literally has no one else trying
There's
the
no
tournament
fucking
that
way I'm
week,
gonna do that trash.
which is doubtful, since the tournament also has a prize for an heirloom ring item.
Heirloom.
Which is an incredibly useful
I actually
item
don't have
as
this
it
one.
gives you an extra 5% experience. And since the item is so useful, that means lots of people are still doing this tournament today in order to try to get one. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to win it. The first time I ever tried doing the tournament, I won 2nd place. Not good enough to get this trinket, but
Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a fuck anymore. Like, you go over, like, on Retail WoW, there's gonna be, like, probably one other guy that's, like, fishing there, and maybe he's trying to go for it or not. Nobody gives a fuck about it anymore. It's kind of sad, dude. Like, these little fishing events used to be, like, a really big deal back, even up till, like, Wrath, they were a big deal.
But it was good enough to get the heirloom ring, which is what I actually wanted anyway. Alright, and that's it for the video. If you know of any other weird items that I missed, I'd love to hear about them, as well as ideas for future videos just like this one down in the comments.
Yep. It is 1:35, guys, which means that my internet, this is the daily fuck up, and I don't know why this happens or anything like that, but it does.
In this video,
let me go ahead and try to load back in again, okay?
Unique
1:35.
Or uniquely bad. And at number 10, we have the Dark Iron Pulverizer. This is a
stun for
two-handed
8
mace
seconds?
that has an amazing effect, where it has a random chance on hit to stun the target for 8 seconds.
Should I use that? Like, imagine me stunning somebody for 8 fucking seconds. Like, just like one fucking boom. Just stunned forever. I don't know. I'd love to see that, okay? We'll watch the Hobbs video after this one, okay, guys? After this video, we will watch the Hobbs video.
That is longer than any other stun that a player character can use in-game. But from vanilla WoW anyway, there were some expansions in which a rogue could get a 10-second kidney shot stun. But anyway, that would have made this weapon really amazing.
That's so stupid.
If it wasn't for the fact that it never procced.
Yeah.
Well, never isn't the correct term for it. It's more like you just had an incredibly low chance to proc, where if you attack something continuously for 5 minutes, you might see it proc one time.
Jesus
it procced
Christ.
so infrequently that it was basically useless and just kind of a gimmick weapon. But oh boy, if this thing did proc, then you could totally swap to a better weapon and make full use of that 8-second stun to maybe kill something.
An 8-second
and
cast.
At number 9, we have Finkel's
Jesus
Skinner.
Christ.
This was a dagger weapon that could be used as a skinny knife, and was the most sought-after skinny knife in the game, because
we need to get this
a
from one of our
+10 to your
skinners.
Skinning level, which,
Ninja,
when
thank you
combined
for
with the
10 gifted community
+5
subs.
skinning
Thank you,
enchant,
Ninja.
allowed players to skin
Thank you very
boss-level
much.
mobs. So, in order to skin Onyxia, you needed the
You've
skinning
already
dagger
seen this?
and the +5 enchant.
Let me see if we've seen it, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and scroll up. Before. Is if it's in the, if it's my react thing.
Task, which was needed in order to get the scales from Onyxia, which were then used to create the cloak, which was needed in order to complete Blackwing Lair. Later on in Classic WoW, they added a sword item called the Zulin Slicer, which was a drop from CG, which gave the same effect as Finkel's Skinner, except on a sword item. So classes who couldn't use daggers could use this sword instead, and be able to actually skin boss level mobs. So despite not being a max level dagger, it was a very sought after dagger for its unique effect. Number 8, the Ravager. This was a two-handed weapon drop from the Scarlet Monastery, with a special, unique, weird effect that had a chance on hit to force your character into basically a blade storm for 9 seconds. Your character would spin around and just do damage to everything within its AoE. Except, unlike Blade Storm, you couldn't move during this weapon's proc. So you were just stuck spinning around in a circle, hoping things in it wouldn't move away from you.
That's right.
Which was entirely possible in PvE situations.
Spinning boy.
Now, the damage this ability did was okay for its level.
It was insane.
And procced a lot of good class abilities.
What do you mean it was insane?
Most people grabbed the axe because of how cool the ability looked, and not really because of its usefulness.
Yeah, there is that too.
As people would use this weapon at max level just to have their character spin around.
Yeah.
They removed the ability to get this weapon and miss, so the only way to acquire this weapon again would be to wait for the Classic WoW servers. And at number 7, we have the unique item called Andonius, Reaper of Souls. This is a one-handed sword, legendary weapon that only existed for 10 minutes. But it had really good stats for those 10 minutes and did a crap ton of damage. And I guess that's kind of the whole point of the limited real-time duration. The item was used during a quest chain for the Atiesh staff, where you'd fight a demon called Atiesh, who is dual-wielding the sword, and drops one of them in the middle of the fight, which you can pick up in order to defeat him with it.
I think that you have to disarm him to get him to drop the sword. I don't remember that. It's been quite a while, but I think that you used to have to disarm him. Yeah, 90 DPS. So I want you guys to just to see that weapon right there. This weapon, melee and range attack, this weapon is better than any weapon, even in Burning Crusade. It was ridiculously fucking powerful.
Sword was unique for being one of only 2 conjured weapons in vanilla WoW. The second being the Hammer of Expertise, of course, which lasted 1 hour instead of 10 minutes. And at number 6, we have the Deathblow. This is a two-handed sword that has a chance on hit effect to deliver a fatal wound.
Who cares?
For a set amount of damage. Now, despite the fact that this weapon says it deals a fatal wound, what it really means is that it just does some extra damage. As in, this fatal wound doesn't automatically kill your target.
No.
It also doesn't mean that it only activates when the target is low on health or something. To, you know, do a fatal wound, it's just a chance on hit to proc some extra damage. Just like other weapons.
It's more like a fake wound. Ooh, or fecal. Is fecal a word? That sounds like fecal. No, never mind.
State the exact same thing. Like the Jeklik Crusher.
Well, I guess it doesn't. No, that does make sense because the proc is shitty.
Hit to wound the target, producing bonus damage. Fatal Wound just seems like a flavorful way to word the same thing.
Yeah.
And there are 4 other weapons in Vanilla WoW that also state they deal their bonus damage as a Fatal Wound. There's
Except for
also
it's
items
not.
like the Halberd of Smiting. Unlike the Deathblow, this weapon has a chance on hit to literally decapitate the target and kill them instantly.
If only it actually did
does
that.
It actually do that?
No.
It just does bonus damage instead? Alright, it's just another ability with...
That'd be a really good mechanic, you know? Like, you just have, like, this weapon, it accidentally procs and just cuts the head off. Not a big deal, dude. You've watched this before? No, I haven't.
The very flavorful way of saying that it does some extra bonus damage.
Yep.
I don't think Blizzard knows what decapitate means. Well, to be fair, this weapon did have another distinction, where its bonus damage proc could proc its bonus damage proc, kind of like how a Shaman's Wind Fury proc could proc Wind Fury. So it did have a chance to do some really good damage, but I don't think that was intended since it was hotfixed later on.
Yep.
And just turned into a normal proc weapon.
That's a really
One
big
that
proc. That does a
decapitated the
fuckload
target
of
and killed
damage,
them
man.
instantly, of course. And at number 5, we have the Hydrocane. This staff, which is a drop from a boss in Nomergon, gave a little bit of frost resistance, which is okay, I guess. But it also allowed the user to just passively breathe underwater.
Yep.
And since this was a weapon, you could swap it in if you were underwater and find
I must have kept this for 10
to allow
years.
your breath meter to reset, and then switch
I
back
kept it
to
until I got the
good
ring.
weapon later on.
Yeah.
All while still being in combat. And because this item is a weapon specifically, that actually made it really useful, as you could swap it in and out during combat.
That's right.
So it was one of the few weapons that people could actually carry around in their bags to have in some of those just-in-case moments. You know, moments where you have to randomly be underwater for a quest for long periods of time. Moments like this almost never happened, but if they did, you'd be happy you carried around a Hydrocane in your bags.
Yeah, I'd keep this around with me for years, and I never used it. Like, there was, like, maybe 2 times that I ever used it, and that was it.
And at number 4, we have the Dazzling Longsword. This sword has an effect where, when you hit a target, you have a chance to decrease their armor by about 100 for 30 seconds. So, armor pen, before that was a stat put in the game. But also, while this armor pen effect was applied, the target cannot stealth or turn invisible. So this sword item basically applied fairy fire to your target, which is really good in PvP against stealthy classes. The unfortunate thing about the sword was that it was a main hand weapon in vanilla. Okay. So you couldn't just equip it into your offhand in order to try to fish for procs on classes which could dual wield it. And
we tried using this, Asmongold had this during the beta, but we never really had a way to actually make it actually usefully. Well, you guys know what I meant to say.
It was also a low-level epic item, which dropped from random mobs of around level 40. So it was hard to obtain.
I have verbal dyslexia,
okay? There was another low-level weapon, which was a little easier to get, called the Phantom Blade.
Okay.
With a similar effect, except it lasted
This is for blacksmithing. You're able to make this.
And was also a main
This is really,
weapon.
really good.
Late in the Burning Crusade, Blizzard changed both of these weapons to just be one-handed instead of main-handed.
Try to load back in, guys.
Which means they could be equipped in the offhand slots, in order to use its proc more effectively. Although by then, their damage would have been way too low to really mean anything in the Burning Crusade. Although these two weapons seem like they would be really good twink weapons for the 30 and 40s brackets. And at number 3, we have Typhoon. This is a two-handed sword, which gives you an increased 1% chance to parry, which is a really good weapon for Death Knights, who wouldn't be added to the game until 2 expansions later.
Yeah.
In Vanilla WoW, tanks included warriors, and that concludes the list of classes which could tank.
That's right.
And warrior tanks always equipped a...
Hear that? You hear that, boys? That's it. No paladins, no druids, no fucking shamans.
One-handed weapon alongside a shield, not two-handed weapons. And parry is definitely a tanking stat, so not very useful for classes who could use this as damage dealers, as they would love that stat to be something that increased their damage instead. But I guess cases could be made for PvP usages, whatever. There was also another low-level sword item called the Guardian Blade, which was a two-handed weapon that gave you bonus armor and defense stat. 2 tank exclusive stats that classes that can use two-handed weapons don't really care about.
I feel like back then, Blizzard, they didn't really know what they were doing. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like they just didn't really know what they were doing. They were just kind of figuring things out, Slowbo, are you logging back on, Slowbo? I'll give Slowbo a few minutes, okay? And, uh-oh. Are we lagging again? I'm trying to invite Smitty. Oh shit, Wooly, where, Fear Ward, can you give me a lead? Fear, can you give me a lead real quick and, we'll get this done?
But I guess cases can be made for classes using them to level up with, where having a little bit more defensive stats might matter. In case you're wondering, no, druids could not use these weapons. Druids cannot use swords.
They're
so
stupid.
Even the
That's
class
why they
who
can't
only
use
cares
swords.
about the stats on the weapon couldn't make use of the defensive stats on these weapons. Plus, bears can't parry attacks anyway. And at number 2, we have Solthrace, the Lasher.
Oh, jeez.
This was a
Solthrace is a waste of time. You remember how many fucking times I tried to go in this? Like, I don't, like, how many fucking times did I do this stupid ass bullshit? It took me, like, probably like 50 times I went in here, and I still couldn't get this shit done, man. I was so fucking mad. Is Slowbo logging back on? If Slowbo isn't on, we need, like, another mage or something. We'll find out what else we can get after that. We have one slot open, assuming that Roy's gonna be able to zone in.
two-handed sword with a proc chance to debuff a target as well as put a dot on them for 15 seconds. Although it's not on this list for that proc, it's actually here because in order to obtain this weapon, you had to combine 2 other weapons together,
This is so fucking
which dropped
annoying,
from
dude.
2 different bosses.
So
So
fucking
far as I
annoying.
know, I think this is the only weapon in the game which required you to combine 2 weapons together in order to make it, which wasn't part of a quest or profession. So in order to make this weapon, you have to head over to Zul'Farrak and kill 2 bosses who would each drop a weapon called Jangthrace, the Protector, and Sangthrace, the Deflector. Jangthrace had an on-use effect that would combine it with a
That's the one I
Sangthrace from
didn't
your
get.
inventory in order to create Solthrace. So unlike other created weapons, you didn't make the weapon through a profession. You literally just combined 2 items from your inventory to create a new one.
This weapon, by the way, Solthrace, is probably one of the biggest pieces of shit weapons that Blizzard has ever made. Like, it's probably, like, literally the biggest piece of shit weapon that Blizzard has ever done. Like, I really cannot think of a more piece of shit weapon than this. Like, it is the dumbest, most fucking pathetic, awful garbage weapon they've ever thought of.
Which is unique in of itself, and isn't really something, to my knowledge, that's been done since. Of course, there were some weapons which you can click on them in order to transform them into other weapons, but this isn't that, as it's literally combining 2 weapons to create a brand new one. And at number 1, we have the Manual Crowd Pummeler. This was a 2-handed mace weapon with a really good on-use effect, which would increase your attack speed by 50%.
This is so stupid. Like, you'd have to farm these fucking things out if you really want to do top-end damage.
30 seconds. But with the downside that you could only use this effect 3 times total. And then you could never use this effect again.
You have to farm out more of them afterwards.
Game with limited charges on its ability. That once you used all 3 charges, you just straight up could not use its ability anymore. And it was turned into a normal stat stick. That being said, it dropped off a low-level boss in Nomergon, so if you wanted extra charges as a max-level character, you could just go in there and farm it to have multiple copies of the weapon. And this is exactly what feral druids would do. Because you see, on certain illegal servers, people have been playing older versions of WoW for many years, and have metagamed everything there is to know about those old versions of WoW. And it's through these less than legal servers that people found out that feral druids could actually pull competitive DPS, as long as they just farmed out a crap ton of manual crowd pummelers. And no joke.
Imagine having to be, or imagine trying to be competitive in a raid, but you have to spend all day farming Nomergon. That's all you have to do. That's so fucking sad, man. It really is. How fucking sad is that?
If you look up how to perform the best DPS for feral druids in vanilla WoW, they will include this weapon as part of the normal rotation.
How scuffed.
Despite the fact that you can only use the effect 3 times before the weapon is useless. And why does this work on feral druids and not other melee classes? Well, that's because feral druids, don't care about the weapon's damage.
That's right.
Weapons to them were only stat sticks, as a weapon damage didn't increase their melee attack damage. So, using the Crowd Pummeler to get a 50% increased attack speed for 30 seconds, which is ridiculous, I might add, was such a great effect that it let them forego the need of having actual good stats on the weapon. Whereas
Or
other
being
melee
good players.
classes would be completely neutered if they had to use this weapon just for a 50% attack speed proc. Because if you swap this weapon to another one, the effect would end immediately. So only Feral Druids could take advantage of this effect's unique ability at max level. Of course, today, you can still get this weapon, they just removed the charge system in Burning Crusade, and gave it a more reasonable haste proc. This weapon was only available and usable in this way in vanilla WoW, basically. Alright, and that's it for the list. Do you know of any other weird or unique weapons that existed in vanilla WoW that I may have missed? If so, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments, as well as ideas for future videos just like this one.